What are some of the most common blind spots, the most common pitfalls, common misconceptions, common blunders that you see happening when it comes to contracts?
The number one thing I would say is that people think they can't negotiate their contracts. The younger construction companies will say, well, if I don't try and negotiate, they're going to give the work to somebody else. That is the general consensus. Now, why that's not true, and having been on the other side of the table, the game is I'm going to give you my worst possible contract as a starting point, fully expecting you to negotiate, because there's going to be backup clauses I have for every single section of the contract. So I'm going to have, if you say this, then I can drop down to this. If you say this, I can drop down to this. So every GC will have that. And so they're going to give you their worst contract. They're going to be able to move on some stuff, and they're happy to move. Now,
that's their opening move, though. That's their opening. Like in a chess game, like this is, they know that they're going to have to do a few moves after this, but they're saying, hey, you know what? Let's open with this and see what happens.
That's it. It's a dance. And if they accept it, happy days, right? They've just taken all the risk from us, and it's made us not risk-free, but we've moved a lot of risk from us onto them.
Do people think they can't because they're scared to ask? Is it a scarcity mindset thing because they're worried they'll lose the work, or is it more like a technical knowledge thing where it's literally never occurred to them that they could?
It's both of those things, Benji. So most of the time is they're scared. I've won this project, or I might win this project. Last thing I want to do is try be difficult,
right?
And so the difficult part of it is just not true. So having been on that side, if there's 5 people bidding for a particular job, most of the time 3 or 4 will try and negotiate the contract, and maybe 1 doesn't. And when you look at that 1 that didn't try to negotiate, that's a red flag. We don't think that you're easier to deal with. We think you've not played at this level before. You're not, this is your first time at the rodeo. And so by not negotiating, you actually look less professional. It looks like you don't know what you're doing. Whereas if you go the other way and you're very selective on what you're trying to negotiate, you make good cases why these things are important to your business and whatever, then all of a sudden you look really professional. And then you can honestly, like our average success rate, and I only say this to just demonstrate that it is possible to negotiate, from over 4,000 contracts that we've negotiated, our average success rate of the changes we put forward is 82%. So if what we try to negotiate, 82% gets across the line.
That's 4 out of 5 things. 4 out of 5 items, you guys get what you want.
Pretty much, yeah. And so just so you know, right, that you can negotiate and you should negotiate. That's probably the biggest misconception.
Hey, everyone. So employment agreements. Every business needs them, but 90% of contractors don't have them. And that's because no one wants to write them. But look, if you don't define the roles for your people, they define them for themselves. Everyone ends up doing a little bit of everything and chaos ensues. It's really not good. We have built an employment agreement tool that will help you fix that. I promise it's way better than what ChatGPT is going to give you. Download it using a link in the description and bring some structure and clarity to everyone on your team.
That's really interesting to me. I guess the fear runs rampant for a smaller, younger, more novice, more junior contractor. They're worried that the bigger GC is not going to like them. But the reverse is actually true. If they just kind of go in eyes shut, they're totally blind to the realities of the situation. They say all sounds good. From the eyes of the larger GC, it's like, man, we just gave them the deal ever and they took it. This is a red flag. Let's actually not move forward because they probably have no idea what's happening here.
Yeah, can they like, I mean, the other side of the table was, that's a red flag. But I remember when we were putting all of these contracts together, if someone came in way lower, if their bid was way lower than everybody else, that's not a thumbs up. Right. That's they've made a mistake here. And it's the same with the contracts. It's like, oh no, this is the type of person. Are you sure you don't want to negotiate? You sure that's it? You're fine with the contract? That'll be a conversation that you'd ring up and you go, you didn't accidentally not submit something?
Yeah, it says something about the subcontractor's experience level. And then I think the other thing too is like on a big enough contract, if you're doing we have many subcontractors in Breakthrough Academy who'll be doing a few $100,000 of work on one project, if they've not read the terms and condition, they could literally bankrupt themselves on that one project. And then you, the GC, are looking for a new drywaller, looking for a new plumber, and looking for a new whatever midway through the job. So it actually makes a ton of sense that your perception, your fear that you have totally backfires in this instance. What are some other common mistakes or pitfalls here, just while we're talking about this?
The next one, I think, is a lot of people think, oh, what you're talking about is just for big stuff. It's for like big contracts, big values. And when I have a big contract, then I'll do this stuff. I'll get into the contracts. And so what I always encourage people who are looking at contracts is, I'm almost sure if, you're mentioning drywallers or GC, if you get some drawings, right? Your average layman can't really read those drawings that well, right? So you're an expert. You can go into the drawing, you can find out here's the internal wall and whatever. You can understand it really, really well. And so that's just one document but you're still not an architect or an engineer, are you? And so you can still understand those drawings, and the contract is the very same. A lawyer drafts it, but you still need to be able to understand what is in it. It's very important to do that. And so you don't have to be a pro at it. You just need to understand it. And so the next thing that is a big problem is people think that my contract's too small, the value's too low, and therefore I don't need to negotiate it. It's fine. I can just go ahead. But that's not true. The actual reality of it is the risk is still as high. They still have those rough sections in the contract, which can potentially put you out of business, can potentially set you up to lose money. And it's about the downside. So Warren Buffett always talks about protecting your downside. Number one, don't lose money. Refer to rule number two is refer to rule number one. And so when something goes wrong, do you want it to go badly wrong for your company, or do you want it just to be a little blip and then you continue to grow as a company? That's the whole purpose of negotiating all of these contracts and understanding what you're in.
Right. This whole theme of, it's funny you mentioned the limiting your downside thing. We've had a whole bunch of experts on literally this week as we've been shooting, and I don't know what it is, if it's just the season for it or if it's on everyone's mind, but this whole idea of limiting those huge, massive, trajectory changing losses for your company being more important than always hitting the jackpot or always hitting a home run seems to be something we're talking a lot about right now for whatever reason. Any other mistakes before we move on?
Yes, the other one that people raise with us all the time is, well, I just sign a standard contract. I sign a standard AIA or whatever standard contract you're dealing with in your country or your state or whatever. And the problem with standard contracts, a standard contract on its own that you've been issued to sign is the best contract you will ever get, right? So if you get a standard contract, you sign that contract as quick as you can, basically. However, of those 4,000 contracts that we've reviewed, next to none have been standard. What actually happens is you get a standard templated contract and it's been amended by a lawyer. And so what you actually receive is a contract that looks like a standard contract. The template is of a standard contract, but they've amended it to make it what we call a hostile contract, which just puts it back into the boat of difficult contract you have to negotiate.
Do they do that on purpose? Do they use the template to make it look innocent and innocuous, and then they kind of sneak in the fangs later on?
I'm not sure. It sounds that there's a puppet master up there.
Yeah.
But I think it's just people are used to that template contract. So if they get given that template contract, they don't run away. Where if they get given this brand new contract that's 100 pages, they're like, right, this is scary.
Listen, if you like that clip, you can watch the full episode by clicking here. If you're not yet subscribed, you probably should be, and you can do that by clicking right here.